Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. How are y'all today? So today is the first weekend of February. Yeah. So today's SGC is very special. You know why? Because we have some live audience here. The volunteers, some of them came over in the morning to offer breakfast and then did some spring cleaning. And then they are now doing the packing. So today's topic, as you all may have noticed, the topic changed. My voice keep getting cut off and paused. Is it still like that? Is my voice still on and off? Let me just double check. Is the voice okay now? Let me know if my voice, let me just do a sound check. Yeah. Yeah, because today's window is all open, that's why. So, yeah. Now we have new services. The windows can close without me going over. Yeah. Do let me know if you find that the audio is not quite working, okay? Hopefully it improved a bit. Yeah, so the original topic was me, mine, myself, or no self in my life. Yeah. So I was thinking Chinese New Year is coming, so I decided to have a switch of topics. So this week, today, we are going to touch on a different topic of 人日 and 太岁. Yeah. So have you all gone to 拜太岁? Maybe you all can leave your comments here. So I thought of talking about these two topics for today because over the years, I think this has become quite a popular practice. And by practice, I mean a Chinese practice. Simply put, these two practices or these two customs they are not Buddhist practices. So there are many other customs and practices that we observe, but it's also not Buddhist practices. So why these two for the topic? For example, Chinese New Year. In the Buddhist practices, there's no such a custom to celebrate Chinese New Year, right? Yeah. It's quite funny because sometimes some students ask me, in Mahayana Buddhism, there's this practice or that practice. It's not found in the Pali Canon. So is it okay to practice? So I asked them, in the Buddha's time, sometimes they say, in the Buddha's time, this wasn't practiced. Yeah. So then I asked them, in the Buddha's time, they didn't use microphone, they didn't use speaker, they didn't use handphone, aircon, or fan. So does it mean that we shouldn't use them? Yeah. So how do you know when it's okay to follow a custom or a tradition and when not to? Which are the practices that are okay to follow? Which are the ones that's not? So to begin, you'll remember we covered the Sigalovada Sutta before. I think a few times over the years. And in that sutta, Sigalaka was was doing certain practices as instructed by his father who has passed away. And the practice was simply to wake up early in the morning, wet his hair, and then pay respect to the various directions. When the Buddha saw that, he didn't just go in guns blazing, but he asked what he was doing. And after that, the Buddha shared that there's a different way of paying respect to the 6 directions. And with that, the Buddha started the teachings. And today we know that as the Sigaluvada Sutta. Yeah, to Sigalaka. It means the words said to Sigalaka. Sigaluvada. So what is the reference to this? So these 2 practices, Bai Tai Sui and Ren Ri. Which one shall I start off first? I think I will start with Ren Ri first. So I recall that when I was very young, when I was a kid, I don't quite remember there being celebration of Ren Ri. Yeah. And at some point then it became a thing, you know. But maybe it's my family, or maybe I just couldn't remember. Yeah. But over time it became quite a thing. Yeah. And then there's a thing about, on Ren Ri, you must eat certain things and things like that. And Ren Ri, let me just switch to the whiteboard. Let me switch to the whiteboard. So I hope this is clear enough. Okay, Ren Ri. So what does Ren Ri mean? So the word Ren Ri in Chinese, it literally means day of human. Or human beings. So what is the context and why is there this custom? So this custom has to do with the Chinese belief, or the Chinese belief of creation. Yeah. So it seems like in practically every most religion and culture, there's some kind of background story or belief of how this will come about. And in the Chinese origin story, if you will, then it talks about this heavenly being called Nü Wa, who is supposed to be the wife of one of the heavenly emperor. Yeah. And they believe that this Nü Wa Hu Tian or something, yeah, and that she created the different beings. And human beings, according to this belief, is said to have been created on the 7th day. Yeah. So I first heard about this when of all places, I first heard about Nü Wa Zhao Shi, not in a temple, okay, not in the Chinese, not in the Buddhist temple, not in the Taoist temple. You will not guess where I learned this from, or where I first heard of this. Okay, do you want to make a guess? You all can post in the comments and guess where I learned it from, or where I heard it from. The place that I first heard of it was, are you all ready? It was in Sentosa. So in Sentosa they have all the different, like almost like a mini theme park, right? So I remember there was this what do you call that? Like a multimedia presentation thing. And then they talk about the different lost tribes lah. Then they talk about some of the folklore. And one of the things they talked about was this Nü Wa Zhao Shi thing. And I think I was probably in secondary or maybe JC, yeah. And when I heard it, I was like, really? Since when do Chinese have such a belief? And apparently, like now if you were to go and search Google, and you find either on Wikipedia or you find on Baidu and so on, apparently this belief dates back all the way to the like the 三国 战国时期, you know, and it slowly evolved. Some of these are actually inside the Dao Zhang. That means it's inside the Taoist scriptures. Yeah. So then, why, as Buddhists, how do we look at it? Yeah. So this day, for those who actually practice this custom, it's known as the 人日 Day of Human Beings, and then they also say, oh, today is the birthday of all human beings. Yeah. So when I remember when my mom at some point, like on the don't know 7th day or something, she will cook some dishes with some vegetables or whatever, and then she told us that, oh, today must eat this. I'm like, why? Because you know, as a kid, you always ask why, right? Everything you also ask why. And then she said that, oh, because today is the birthday of all human beings. So I was like, birthday of all human beings? But today is not my birthday. And she was like, Aya, you don't mind tiki, don't be so stubborn, don't be so like, you know, just follow the tradition. I never exactly quite follow it or believe in it, yeah, nor think much about it. And for that matter, I think most people, even those who celebrate 人日, they may not even know the origin of it and the implication, yeah, which is that if you honestly celebrate this, then you honestly believe that all human beings were created by this heavenly being called Yuwa, which means that you actually subscribe to some kind of creation belief, which is actually not shared by Buddhists. Yeah. Just as at interfaith dialogues, I would actually put up a slide, yeah, whereby, you know, in interfaith circle, the different religious leaders will share their belief, and for the most part, all other 9 official religions in Singapore, they share a belief in some form of creation. Yeah, the way that belief understand creation may be slightly different, but they all do share that belief. So my slide would say, Buddhists do not share in a belief of a creator God. And usually when I share that, the participants, those who are present, they will all be like, you know, all deadpan silent, and I will tell them to enjoy a moment of awkward silence. Yeah. My point in highlighting this during interfaith circle is not to create trouble, yeah, nor to cause distress, but to highlight that there is a difference in our belief, you know, that we cannot simply just always whitewash or gloss over the differences if we want to have sincere friendship, yeah. If you want to have if you want to deepen our trust among each other, we need to know the differences. And if we can still be in harmony with one another, then that harmony, that respect is truthful. And we should strive towards that. It's not easy, but we should strive towards that. Yeah, and so then, how about among Buddhists? Yeah. So as Buddhists, then it's a bit hard to say that if you are a Buddhist and then you celebrate 人日, isn't it? Yeah. If the celebration of 人日, because the fact is that there's no second way of celebrating 人日. Yeah. If you celebrate 人日, you're subscribing to the belief that all human beings were created on this day. Yeah. On the 7th day of creation, or so to speak. Yeah. Now I have no issue with people having such a belief. Okay, let me get it out of the way first. I have no issue with people having such a belief. Beliefs are what they are. Beliefs. You know, as long as the beliefs are not imposed on others, then that's okay. We can all have our own beliefs, and be in harmony with one another. But if we say that we are Buddhists, then and yet we say that we share in this belief, for whatever reasons, maybe we share in this belief because out of tradition, because it was passed down through generations, or maybe because our senior masters from in our lineage actually celebrate it, so out of respect for him, then we also go ahead and celebrate. Then we got to look at the Kalama Sutta, right? And various other suttas, not just Kalama Sutta, where the Buddha rejected the notion of accepting a belief or a teaching simply because it is passed down through traditions. In other suttas, he questioned the acceptance of teachings that were recited, or simply because it's widespread or known. So after I suggested to the volunteers and also to the morning meditation group, to be very honest with you, a part of me hesitated a bit. And the reason is because I think in many Chinese temples today, I don't know about other traditions, okay, but in many Chinese temples, this is quite popularly celebrated. I cannot speak for other monasteries or venerables, so I don't fully understand nor appreciate the rationale for perpetuating this practice, because to me, simply because it's a Chinese thing doesn't make it more correct, doesn't make it more okay to follow. Because if we say, because this is a Chinese thing, so we should follow, but traditionally Chinese also have other belief and practices, Traditionally Chinese, they would 吃鱼生, right, which is the real yu, right? But Buddhist temples, we don't eat the real fish, right? So, and traditionally, many times during festives, Chinese would kill chicken, kill pig, offer all those things, livestock. But Buddhists have decided to adopt a diet of compassion, right? And decided to go with the vegetarian diet. So from various aspects, we know that in the Buddhist tradition, we no longer follow suit with every single thing in the Chinese custom, right? There are Chinese customs that is in line with the truth, that is in line with values, that is taught and espoused by the Buddha, such as filial piety. So whenever there are celebration of, let's say, Qingming, this remembrance of our forefathers on gratitude, then it's a practice that we encourage, but we infuse it with Dharma practices. But for Renru, then I don't say I don't say that I'm giving an instruction to all the listeners to say stop. In Buddhism, we are not in the business of controlling people. So all I'm saying is, if you do celebrate Renru, I invite you to go and fact check. Who knows, maybe I got it wrong, but go and fact check. Not simply because a senior monk or nun or layman or laywoman say that it's okay, then it's okay. Neither is it not okay simply because Sifu says so, This monk, who am I, right? But go and investigate, okay? go and investigate the origin of 人日 and see whether it's correct. Yeah. So I want to just very quickly share on one sutta. This sutta is an extract extracted from this sutta. Let me see. I think it's on the Samaditi Sutta, on right view. This sutta on right view is from the Majjhima Nikaya. So let me see. Are you able to see the screen? Yes. So this sutta itself is from Majjhima Nikaya. Majjhima Nikaya, Samaditi Sutta. This is Sutta number 9. Samaditi Sutta. Right view. So as we've shared before on this sutta, the Buddha start off, or Venerable Sariputra start off with the teaching on the 10 wholesome deeds, and then starts off with the 12 links of dependent origination, the 4 noble truths, and so on. Yeah. So at one part of the teaching, then it talked about ignorance. As we are familiar with the 12 links of dependent origination, Paticca Samuppada, it starts off with diagrammatically or in terms of the structure. We usually say ignorance is the base, and then with ignorance as a condition, the sankhara arise, volition arise. Then with volition as a condition, then consciousness arise. Consciousness as a condition, name and form arise. Name and form as a condition, then six sense space arise. Six sense space as a condition, then contact arise. Contact as a condition, feelings arise. Feelings as a condition, then craving arise. Craving as a condition, then clinging arise. Clinging as a condition, becoming arise. Becoming as a condition, then birth arise. Birth as a condition, then aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, this suffering, then distress and despair arise. So 无明缘行，行缘事，事缘名色，名色缘六，六缘处，处缘受，受缘爱，爱缘起，起缘有，有缘生，生缘老死，愁叹苦忧恼，众苦聚集。So this is the standard sequence. And sometimes, if we just learn it and without further reflection, we may wrongly think that there is an origin ignorance. So in this and many other suttas, the Buddha then talk about that there is the origin of ignorance. So you will notice that in this sutta, the 12 links itself are analyzed in terms of the 4 noble truths. The 4 noble truths we usually learn as the truth of suffering, the truth of suffering, origin of suffering, cessation of suffering, path leading to the cessation of suffering. It's a fourfold formula. So basically, truth, what is X, origin of X, cessation of X, and then path leading to cessation of X. And you replace X with practically anything and it still applies. So in this case, it is applied to ignorance. So if you flow me through here, then there is understands ignorance, and then the origin and the cessation and the way. Okay, so this is the fourfold formula. So to understand the ignorance and the origin of ignorance, but what is what is this ignorance? The ignorance is basically not knowing the 4 noble truths. So not knowing, not knowing what? Not knowing suffering, not knowing origin of suffering, not knowing cessation of suffering, not knowing the way leading to the cessation of suffering. But what is the origin? What is the origin of ignorance? So the arising of the taints, with the arising of the taints, there is the arising of ignorance. So this itself, the arising, this is the origin. Yeah, so taints itself is the origin. So origin is linked to the taints. So then the question is, so what led to the arising of taints, right? So here, the next part, then there's the description or the teaching on how does taints come about, and this is where it gets interesting. Again, the fourfold formula. So understand the taints, origin, the cessation, and then the way leading to the cessation. Yeah, I'm going through rather quickly with the assumption that you're familiar with this sutta, okay, and you're familiar with the fourfold formula. If you find this going a bit fast, feel free to go to this sutta. We provide the link later, and you can read through and take some time to digest. And if you have further questions after that, you can always post to this video, and then I will try to cover it in future sessions. Or if need be, I will then reply in the comments. Because I want to focus on this part, which is so what are the taints? So because taints, right? Taints is, as in the earlier section, taints lead to ignorance. Okay, so try to keep this in mind. Taints lead to ignorance. And by now you may be wondering, okay, well, what has this got to do with Renru, right? So taints lead to ignorance. But what are the taints? So taints is, number one, taint of sensual desire, taint of being. In some translation, it talks about taint of existence. Okay, and number three, taint of ignorance. In other words, where there is sensual desire, it taints the mind, and this taint, okay, of sensual desire can become the condition for ignorance to arise. When you are overwhelmed by sensual desire, when you are immersed in sensual desire, hard for us to see things clearly, and that's why there is ignorance. Yeah, taint of being. So being, or sometimes translated as existence, the very existence itself. Yeah, that we exist, or we come into existence. Yeah, this itself can also become the source of ignorance. Yeah, why? Because we somehow we are not sick of being around, you know. we have this very strong craving for existence. So this itself leads to our inability to see things clearly. And further, there is the taint of ignorance, which is the interesting part. So if you look at this, then it seems like this is a cyclical loop. Yeah. So for any instance of ignorance, there are past sensual desire, being, and ignorance that conditions it. And for that ignorance that conditioned this particular one, okay, there is yet further past instances. Okay. So this is how it comes about. So then what is interesting is these three taints in the earlier part talk about three taints leading to ignorance, right? And then over here it talk about with the arising of ignorance, there is the arising of taints. So taints condition the arising of ignorance, and in ignorance in turn condition the arising of taints. So this part is basically what is observed by the Buddha, that when he traced back and tried to discern a beginning, yeah, there is no beginning that is discernible. Let me repeat that. Because taints and ignorance, they are mutually conditioning each other. The Buddha declared in various suttas that a beginning is not discernible. Yeah, when he traces back, he does not see the start, because it merely condition each other. And that's why in various suttas, various teachings, the statement, since beginningless time. Since beginningless time. So it is very interesting that in the Buddhist circle, sometimes we may, due to conditions also, conditions of our own cultural background, be it the Chinese culture, Indian culture, Sri Lankan culture, Asian culture, or even Western culture, we may bring with us our culture and understanding to look at the teachings. And sometimes our cultural influence is stronger than our understanding of the Dharma. And as a result, we may sometimes be hazy about some of this area, and this is one area, which is that as much as in Buddhism, first of all, there's no belief in a creator, God, or creation, and linked to this is this sutta and many other suttas where the Buddha explicitly highlighted that there's no beginning, so if there's no beginning, then that means how can we believe? On one hand, we say, oh, Buddha is enlightened, and we accept the Buddha's teaching. We take refuge in the Buddha, we take him as the teacher, and then we take the refuge in his teaching. So we accept his teaching. We may not fully understand, we may not fully accept, as in experience it yet, but we take refuge, triple gem, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. And in which case, then, how can we, on one hand, accept this teaching, and on the other hand, accept Renru? Do you see the dichotomy here? So I am sharing this sutta. I will post this link. I mentioned already, Majjhima Nikaya number 9, the teaching on right view. But again, I highlight, I'm in no position nor to sort of make a statement and say, okay, from today onward, no one can celebrate Renru. No, I'm not saying that. But rather inviting whoever watched this video, and if you do celebrate Renru, and you consider yourself a Buddha's disciple, to go and investigate for yourself. Ehi Pasiko, right? Go and investigate for yourself, see for yourself. Number one, what is the origin? What is Renru? And what is the origin of Renru? And perhaps then you may come to see what is the cessation of Renru and the way leading to the cessation of Renru, starting with right view. So don't take my word for it, go and investigate. And who knows, maybe you find, if you manage to find the teaching on Renru in the scriptures, let me know. I'll be happy to stand corrected. Okay, so the next part is on Tai Sui. This Renru, maybe I was thinking, maybe still not so bad, but Tai Sui, wow, this one very touchy. So again, the first thing I want to highlight is Tai Sui is not a Buddhist belief nor practice. Okay, but I have no issue, I have no trouble with this practice. Buddhists don't have trouble with non-Buddhist, non-Dhamma practices. Okay, we're not against other religion or other people practicing their belief. No issue. I mean, doesn't affect us anyway, right? And again, it is if we consider ourselves to be Buddhists and we practice this, then we have to ask ourselves, okay, is there any conflict? So a long time ago, I vaguely read that Tai Sui actually refers to the sun or one of the stars that is linked to Jupiter. So that day I mentioned in the morning. Then later on, I actually go and fact check, double check, because sometimes our memory can play tricks. And then when I fact check, yes, it's Mu Sing, Jupiter. So if you actually subscribe to praying to the Tai Sui, right? Every year, some group of people will fan twice Tai Sui, then we're supposed to go and pray, right? In a kind of like appeasement, okay, so that your year will be smooth and so on and so forth. And now this monk come and tell you actually it's about Jupiter. Then I think for some people you will just stop the video and just close, or maybe even report this video. Now let me repeat myself, okay? I'm not against this practice. Yeah, as long as it's not practiced as a Buddhist practice, or unless if you practice it, you practice doing it with a Dharma approach and not with the wrong belief. Yeah, because after all, if you consider the Sigalovada Sutta, right, the Buddha actually shared with Sigalaka a different way of paying respect to the 6 directions. So this Tai Sui thing actually has to do with the Chinese, this is purely a Chinese thing, that the way they look at astrology and they look at the movement of the stars and planets. In Chinese culture, the stars and planet are oftentimes intertwined, but they are often labeled according to the 天干地支 and so on, So I am not an expert in that, okay? Let me first tell you, okay? But from what little I know, there's the belief that our waxing and waning of fortune is influenced externally by the movement of the stars. Yeah, there's such a belief, okay? But when we put it out using modern terms, oh, it's actually Jupiter, then some of you will be like, am I really believing in that? Yeah, but when we tell you, oh, this year is what, 丁丑年 or 甲亥年 or whatever, then it feels like, there's something about it, right? So again, you can go and do your own research, but apparently today, if you look at the practice of Bai Tai Sui, right, Tai Sui is presented as a collection of heavenly generals, yeah, and it is basically the Wu Xing multiplied by the 12 zodiac symbols, yeah, 12生肖, together collectively as 60. And this in the Chinese astrology is actually the 60-year cycle. After 60-year cycle, it repeats. Yeah. So so the gist of it is Jupiter actually move around the sun, yeah, in a certain very fixed, rather, there's a certain pattern to it, and it takes, I think, about 12 human year to move one round. So just nice, and then multiplied by the 5 elements, so you have the 60-year cycle. So for those who believe in it, then every year the Jupiter is at different parts of it, and they divide it into 12 segments, roughly corresponding to the 12 time periods, yeah, for the Chinese system. And they believe that wherever it is, then it influences those who are born on certain years. Yeah, so that's the gist of the belief. And for that, is there any basis for this belief in Buddhism? And again, I want to share with you yet another sutta. So this sutta is called Bhaddekarata Sutta, and it's found in Majjhima Nikaya 131. Now this translation is done by a Venerable Thanissaro Bhikkhu. You can find this in Sutta Central, I think, or dharmatalks.org, sorry. In various websites you can find it, but in this particular one, I extracted from the dharmatalks.org. So this sutta is very interesting. Yeah, it's titled An Auspicious Day. In another translation, there is actually a foreword where you talk about this word rata, the word rata, and in Pali, rata is actually night, yeah, and so different translators interpret it slightly differently, but a lot of them interpret it as night. So Venerable Thanissaro Bhikkhu translate it as day on the basis that in various sutta, when they refer to one night, it is actually talking about one day, one night. And the reason basis for that is because apparently in the Indian culture, they are lunar based. Yeah, that means moon based. So whereas the solar calendar, we look at the sun, right? So for example, in Chinese, 一日, one day literally means one sun. Yeah, so you don't have to say one sun, one moon. You see the passing of a sun, yeah, and the new sun, 新的一日, yeah, a new sun, literally a new sun. Yeah, it means one day. Yeah, so that's how he interpreted it. And then if you look at the teaching itself, yeah, the sutta itself, it will make a bit more sense that this translation should refer to day. So the title itself, An Auspicious Day. And I decided to cite this sutra because with the Chinese New Year, when we say go and 拜太岁, why do we 拜太岁? It's simply because we think that perhaps this year your year may not be auspicious, your year may not go so well, yeah. So and you hope that it goes better, right? Is there anyone who hope that your year is not auspicious? If you hope that your year is not auspicious, then you can log out now, okay? Yeah, this segment is for those who want to have an auspicious day, an auspicious year. Yeah, and I like to think that those who go and 拜太岁, number one, they do want to have an auspicious year, yeah, a bountiful year, a good year. Plus the belief that, oh, because 犯太岁, then because of 太岁, then potentially the year may not be so good. And three, the year that they 冲, yeah, there's a conflict, and that's why these three together, then they may choose to go and 拜太岁. But I will have you know, if you search online and do some research, apparently this practice is done differently in different countries. Some countries, they only do the one that is 对冲. Some is the 本年. Then some is the, like for example, if you look at the 12, right, as the clock, then they also consider, let's say if Jupiter is at 12 o'clock, then 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, all have to pray, you know. Some countries pray that way. Yeah, so who is correct? If you have always been praying only on a 本命年, then how about the others? And then there are some who pray on the 对冲 one. That means if this year Jupiter is at 12, then the 生肖 at 6, yeah, then must pray. Yeah, and some pray all 4. Yeah, so as Jupiter rotate, right, then it becomes 1, 4, 7, and 10, yeah, and so on. So food for thought, okay, food for thought. As I say, I'm not an expert in this or authority in this. For that matter, I don't have such a belief, okay? And we are not here to criticize this practice, but just to highlight that this practice, to share about the Buddhist angle on how to have an auspicious day. Yeah, this is not my idea, okay? This is what the Buddha said. So we have that opening. I have heard, usually translated as thus have I heard. So some of the modern translators, they use the translation technique of more in a way colloquial or more modern. Yeah, so I have heard that on one occasion the Blessed One was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. Yeah, so sometimes translated as Anathapindika's park. Because strictly speaking, in the Buddha's time, it was simply a park. Yeah, it doesn't exactly match with what we think of as monastery today, although it served as a monastery. So it's not wrong to translate as monastery in that sense, yeah. But don't expect that in the Buddha's time there was a full set of structure with gates and everything. In the early days, no. And as I've shared before, Savatthi is the name of a city-state, yeah, and it's very prosperous. Yeah, the name itself literally means a lot of things. So Jeta's Grove, named after the prince who offered the trees and sold the land to Anathapindaka. There's a whole background story I will share another time. Okay, so there he addressed the monks. Yes, Lord, the Buddha. The monks responded to him. Here, him referring to he and him referring to the Buddha. Blessed One is another epithet for the Buddha. So the Blessed One said, "Monks, I will teach you the summary and exposition of one who has had an auspicious day. Listen and pay close attention, I will speak." As you say, Lord, the monks responded to him. So the Blessed One said, "You shouldn't chase after the past." So this is the first one. Or place expectations on the future. What is past is left behind. What is the future is as yet unreached. So as you all may recall, not just myself but various teachers, we have been highlighting this. This is based on what the Buddha has taught, and not simply because the Buddha has taught that, but if you consider it, is it true that what is past is already left behind? It's true, isn't it? Yeah, what is past is already past. Yeah, you chase after the past, it will not come back. Yeah, the fact that it's past, literally, by definition, it means it's not happening anymore. What about the future? Future is as yet unreached. The future is not here yet. That's why it's called future. If it's here, then it's present. Yeah. So about the way we look at time, yeah, the way we look at the past, the way we look at the future. Whatever quality is present, you clearly see right there, not taken in, unshaken in. That's how you develop the heart. Yeah. So with respect to the present, to not become affected by it as well, to not be immersed, and indulge in it also, but to just be aware, to know. So ardently doing what should be done today, for who knows tomorrow death. Yeah. So this is the attitude, that day by day, what you need to do today, do it today. Yeah, don't wait for tomorrow. You cannot practice. There are two time periods that you cannot practice: yesterday and tomorrow. Yesterday already gone, cannot practice. Tomorrow haven't come, you cannot practice. Yeah, and even today you can only practice now. There is no bargaining with mortality and his mighty hod. Yeah. So here it is a personification of mortality. In other words, the very fact that we can die anytime. Yeah. This is something that you cannot bargain. Yeah. When you go to the market, maybe you can bargain. Nowadays in Singapore, you cannot bargain in many places also. Yeah. But the one thing that you cannot bargain with is our mortality. Whoever lives thus ardently, relentlessly, both day and night. Yeah. So this is the reference. That's why Venerable Thanissaro Bhikkhu chooses to translate Rata as a day. So whoever lives thus ardently, relentlessly. That means for this one day, one night, this person. Here notice that there's no mention whether it's a monk or nun, layman or laywoman. Whoever do this, then you have an auspicious day. Yeah, not by virtue of your position in society, not by virtue of whether you are in a certain group or not. Yeah, but what you do, how you live your life. Yeah, not because you did this, you go and you go and find that say or not. If you want to have an auspicious days, yeah, you must do this. So says the peaceful sage. This peaceful stage refers to the Buddha. So let's go into the rest of the text very quickly. And how, monks, does one chase after the past? The Buddha give more explanation. My teacher used to say, 佛菩萨慈悲佛菩萨不含糊把它讲清楚。My teacher always say that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the enlightened ones, they are very compassionate. They don't give teachings halfway and let you go and guess. They teach you and explain clearly every single thing. So over here, one gets carried away with the delight. In the past, I had such a form or body. Yeah. In the past, I had such a feeling. In the past, I had such a perception. In the past, I had such a fabrication. In the past, I had such a consciousness. This is called chasing after the past. So you notice that in many of the Buddhist texts, yeah, in particular the modern translation, then there is this thing called ... This is what is known as abridging. So abridging is basically when you have a series of texts that are somewhat repetitive with only certain phrases that is different, then this technique is used to remove the repetition. So for example, over here, it has this part up to, in the past I had such a form, right? Then continue, yeah, in the past I had such a feeling, yeah, and so on. So actually it is inclusion of one gets carried away with the delight of and so on. So this part is being removed as part of the ... So when you look at the whole verse, you can understand it as expanding the whole thing, but for those who are familiar, you'll notice that this is none other than form, perception. So this is form, feelings, perception, then fabrication. Another translation is mental formation, and consciousness. In other words, the 5 aggregates. And another way to look at the 5 aggregates is basically the mind, the body, and the mind. Yeah, that when you think about the past, yeah, we chase after the past, then you think, in the past I was like this, in the past I was like that, or I had such a, I live in such a way, and so on and so forth. So then the Buddha say, and how does one not chase after the past? So it's basically the opposite. One does not, over here, one does not get carried away with the delight of what? Of this preoccupation in our mind, thinking about the past. In the past my body was like that, in the past my feeling was like that, in the past perception was like that, but in the past fabrication, mental formation was like that, in the past consciousness was like that. Yeah, do we do that? Sometimes we do. We have preoccupation about how it was in the past, right? This is quite common, isn't it? Especially Chinese New Year. Yeah, you meet up with family members, yeah, or friends that you don't meet so often, and then you do what? Then you talk about the past. Yeah, I talk about how it was. Remember last time? Yeah, last time police wear shorts. Nowadays police wear shorts again. Yeah, we may think last time. We may look at the kids, and then we think, kids nowadays good life. Last time we like this, last time we like that. This is part of getting carried away with the delight of the past. So next, so Chinese New Year, good time to practice. But if you practice, maybe your friends and family may find you quite boring. They talk about you, they talk about the past, then you look at them like, Ami tofu. Then how? Later we think about it. So if you look at the next 2 paragraphs, it's similar to the earlier one, yeah, except that it's about the future. So place expectation on the future. How does one go about doing it? One gets carried away with the delight of in the future I might have such form, such a feeling, such a perception, such a fabrication, and such a consciousness. So this is called placing expectation on the future. So again, this is the 5 aggregates. So how does one not place expectation on our future? Again, it is not getting carried away with the delight of having this preoccupation that in the future I might have such a form, right? Such a feeling, such a perception, such a fabrication, such a consciousness. Now, I just want to highlight that when we look at this 4 stanza, this pair, for some of us, getting in touch with this idea of form, feelings, perception, mental formations and consciousness is something new. For some of us who have been attending Dharma class, then maybe it's not so new, right? But I have a question for all of you. On a daily basis, when you think about the past, do you think in terms of these phrases? When you talk this Chinese New Year, you think about it. When you meet your friends, right? Try to talk to them in this way. Oh, remember last time the form was like this, the feeling was like this, the perception was like this. If you use these exact terms, I think after 5-10 minutes, your friends and family will look at you suspiciously like 走火入魔了. So then how? Learn Dharma, then you have to apply Dharma, right? But if you don't apply, then but if we apply, then it seems a bit odd. So in the past how many years, I've been sharing with students that the Buddha used these terms because these terms were common lingo that was used to describe one's the way they understand their existence. Today, the way we describe ourselves may be quite different using different terms, right? In terms of mentality, the mental states, only 4 No, we have a lot of different description, and a lot of our description has to do with how we feel. Not this feeling. This one is more about sensation, but emotions, right? So if you compare our descriptors today, the adjectives we use today to describe ourselves, there may be some overlap, but there may be some parts that doesn't have a one-to-one connection. So how? I'm highlighting this because some students, when you read the suttas directly, you may come off feeling like a bit disconnected, right? You may feel like, oh, the teaching is not relevant, but I tell you it's not. Why? Because when the Buddha gave this teaching, the teachings are phrased in a way much like how chemists would describe water. Chemists would describe water as H2O, right? I mean, I'm presuming like when they talk about water in a lab, then they talk about H2O, right? And in chemistry's lesson in secondary school, we also learn about H2O. But on a daily basis, do you look at water as H2O? Don't tell me yes. Rubbish. When you drink water, you think, oh, the hydrogen and the oxygen is very well mixed today. Nobody thinks in that way, right? But does it mean that chemists got it wrong? No. Then does it mean that we got it wrong? Also no. It's just that the way we experience reality is oftentimes disconnected with what is the reality, right? But you cannot deny this reality that we experience, which is the fluid water. At the same time, you cannot say that the chemist is wrong, because that understanding is what allows us to do amazing things with water, with everything in this world that we call science. And at the same time, the way we experience this world is not at the molecular, atomic, chemical level. So how do we bridge the two? Then because we experience it this way, then we need our reflection have to be at this level, keeping in mind the lower level, the fundamental level. And so if we were to apply this in our day-to-day, then we should consider, normally how do I think about it? Or normally we think, oh, in the past, you remember we were in primary school and so on. Yeah, just use those terms. But to catch ourselves when we think in this way. Because when we think in this way, that means we are actually getting carried away with the delight of the past. And if we start to think about, oh, well, next week like this, next month like this, then we are getting carried away with the future. But wait a minute. Does it mean we should forget about everything in the past and not do any plan for the future? I would say no as well. No as well. Why? Because the Buddha himself recollected his manifold past life. So he's definitely not telling people to forget about the past. The Buddha likewise, in even way back, how many kalpas ago, in the time of Buddha Dipankara, he made aspiration for future enlightenment. Right? So he did make a plan. In Buddhism, we don't see the word plan. Yeah, it's called making an aspiration, making a vow. Right? So it doesn't mean that you should not plan for the future. It just means that you set a goal, but you don't spend your time while you're in the present just affixed with the future. You know, aspiration making in Buddhism is designating your future goal and then tracing back to see what are the things you must do now. Yeah, and how to do that? Using the teaching on conditionality. Yeah. So while we plan for the future, it is rooted in the present. And while we recollect the past, it is not to become carried away with the past. Yeah, but it's to reflect on the past, to learn from it. Then to do what? So that our present makes more sense. Then it's okay. So, and how is, let's continue. And how is one taken in with regard to present qualities? Then the present. There's the case of when uninstructed run-of-the-mill person who has not seen the noble ones, is not versed in the teachings of the noble ones, is not trained in the teachings of the noble ones, sees form as forms, or self as possessing self, or form as in self, or self as in form. So this is the teaching on no self. So nicely lead to 2 weeks later we'll talk about no self. Okay, so here run-of-the-mill meaning the average Joe who is not enlightened. Now this here, the original verse should be Aryan, and I shared in many classes. The term noble, in my opinion, while linguistically correct, because the word noble, Arya, noble is a direct translation of the word Arya. But you ask yourself, if you look at doctors and nurses and teachers, we will say they are very noble, right? Yeah, we will say that they are very noble in their choice of careers. But do we consider them equal to Arahant and enlightened being? No, right? So surely the connotation of the word Arya goes beyond simply noble. Yeah, in Chinese it's translated as Shen. Yeah, so I would, and it's usually as opposed to Fan. So the thing is, all these are English words. Yeah, all these are English words. And because the Buddha didn't awaken in an English-speaking environment, so there was no word directly created to describe that state. The closest is the word awaken. The next closest is the word that we borrow from the Western vernacular called enlightened. Yeah, because the word enlightened also has its own history and background, but this is, to me, a closer term, either awaken or enlightened. But awaken is usually translation for bodhi, which literally has the meaning of awaken. So I tend to choose for Arya to translate as enlightened. So one who has not seen the enlightened ones is not versed in the teachings of the enlightened ones, is not trained in the teachings of the enlightened ones. Then it makes sense, right? Not just a noble thing. Yeah. So sees then this part, and as a result of not having that encounter, in other words, not having seen the enlightened one, the teaching, not training in it, then what happened? Would, as a result, being unenlightened and so on, sees form as self, self as, so this is the first state, form as self, then self as possessing form, or form as in self, or self as in form. Yeah, so you notice that this is actually a fourfold permutation. Yeah, form and self, so these two, then sees form as self, so equating physical form as self. Okay, so that's the first permutation. Then seeing self as possessing form. So still this is separate. The first one is they are equivalent, the second is they are separate. So self, that means I possess physical form. So physical form belong to the self, but what is self? Not defined. Okay, it's a thing that is separate, that owns the self, owns the form. And the third one, form as in self. So that's the physical form that is in this I. The first one is equivalency. The third one is slightly different. That there's a self, and then form inside this self. And then fourth one is self inside the form. Also the different permutation. In another sutta called the what is that? Brahmajala Sutta. Yeah, the net of views. So in that sutta, it talks about all the different permutation. So over here, you notice again, form, feelings, perception, fabrications, and consciousness. So in other words, in terms of the 5 aggregates, you apply the fourfold permutation, so we have 20 different permutations. I will not go through the detail, but basically unenlightened beings do this. Yeah. In other words, identify with this mind and body as me in various ways. Okay. So, and how is one not taken in with regard to the present qualities? So this is about present. Presently, you identify with this mind and body as me. The other one is identify with yourself in the past, your mind and body in the past as yourself, and then also the future. And this is the present. So there is the case where a disciple of the noble ones who has seen the noble ones, is versed in the teaching of the noble ones, is well trained in the teachings of the noble ones, does not see form as self, or self as possessing form, or form as in self, or form as or self as in form. Tongue twister. So again, the 4 permutation. Yeah, except that now it is does not see. Now does not see. And similarly, we have form, feelings, perception, fabrications, and consciousness, of the 5 aggregates. So then the Buddha wrap up this part here, again with a set of verses, with you shouldn't chase after the past or place expectations on the future. What is past is left behind, the future is yet unreached. Whatever quality is present, you clearly see right there, not taken in, unshaken. That's how you develop your heart. Yeah. So with respect to the present, even with the present, the statement you shouldn't, so if you want to become enlightened, then you shouldn't. Yeah. If you don't want suffering, you shouldn't. Yeah. You shouldn't chase after the past, you shouldn't hanker for the future. With respect to the present, you shouldn't cling on, identify to mind and body, or anything for that matter, as self. Yeah. If you don't want suffering. If you do it, then suffering will follow you. Yeah. Ardently doing what should be done today, for who knows, tomorrow death. So some of these verses can be quite blunt and direct, but the context is, for those who have ordained, then this is the attitude. Does it mean that lay people don't have to have this attitude? Well, again, Buddhism, we are not in the business of dictating people's life. Yeah, but for the most part, this is my thoughts about the teachings. If you look at the teachings, it always says "old monks," yeah, or old, usually referring to the monks, but it applies to monks, nuns, laymen, and laywomen. whoever don't want suffering, whoever seeks enlightenment, then the teaching applies to you. There's no bargaining with mortality and his mighty horn. And especially verses like this, doesn't matter whether you're monastic or lay, isn't it? It still applies. Yeah. And whoever lives thus ardently, relentlessly, both day and night, has truly had an auspicious day. So says the peaceful sage. And again, operative word, the subject, whoever. Whoever. Never say only monks who live in this way can have auspicious day. Only Buddhists, no. Only those who stay under the Bodhi tree, no. Whoever lives thus ardently, relentlessly, both day and night, has truly had an auspicious day. This is the teaching of the Buddha. So if you consider yourself a disciple of the Buddha, then you're going to ask yourself, is there another way to look at Tai Sui? Then maybe you can understand Tai Sui as our defilements, If you understand, there's one way to pray to Tai Sui that would be okay for Buddhists. You look at Tai Sui as Mara, Tai Sui as our defilements. Then it's not just on Chinese New Year, then you pray, then you do your practice, It's every day. Because is there a day that your defilements is not active? Is there a day where your Tai Sui defilement is not active? No, right? Every day is active. So every day you must practice. Then every day will be auspicious. And that's how you can have a whole year that is auspicious. Monks, I will teach you the summary and exposition of one who has had an auspicious day. Thus it was said, and in reference to this was it said. This is what the Blessed One said, gratified the monks, delighted in the Blessed One's words. So again, I highlight, I'm not against this practice, because this practice is not a Buddhist practice, Bai Tai Sui. And I like to think that some temples, out of compassion, I like to think it is out of compassion, and as a skillful means, because anyway people want to pray Tai Sui. So then instead of, if a person with this mindset go and pray Tai Sui, then go and maybe perform some rites, and maybe in the process even kill chicken or pig or whatever, then you actually create more unwholesome karma. So I think some temples then in the end go along with it, but infuse the Dharma inside. Unfortunately, sometimes people end up following it, but not realizing the Dharma. This is like what I think is Ying Chun Dao Si. He once said that some of the teachings is like if you give medicine to kids, they don't want to eat, so you have to wrap it with candy. Then they take, and when they finish, then the medicine is already infused. So that's the aim, sometimes I think. But unfortunately, sometimes people, when they finish the candy, they spit out the Dharma, the medicine. So in the end, they're just going for the candy, So if you keep going to a temple, Buddhist temple, if you are Buddhist, so disclaimer, this is not for those who are non-Buddhist. If you're non-Buddhist, maybe you're Taoist, maybe you're a Chinese, but you don't have any particular belief, but you believe in Bai Tai Sui, by all means, I have no issue, I have no trouble with you. But if you are Buddhist and you go to Chinese Buddhist temple, or monastery, and then go and Bai Tai Sui with the wrong view, thinking that, by doing these rites or ritual, then it can influence the star and negate the effect of Jupiter on your life, then it's a wrong view. It's wrong view. Then you're missing the medicine. You are just taking the candy and then throw away the medicine. Then you are wasting the kind effort of the sangha, the senior monks in the various temple, who see that if I tell you don't pray Tai Sui, you still pray what, right? So okay lah, we also organize Bai Tai Sui, but you think carefully when you go to different temples, when they Bai Tai Sui, what they do? They invite you to kind of do chanting role, right? So it's still Dharma practice, and I like to think that the temples, they don't have that kind of wrong view, you know, and they want to get you to learn the Dharma. Out of 1,000 who go, maybe not everybody will learn it the first time round. Maybe just a small number, but it's for this small number who is able to learn that we do this. And I hope through this video, more of you will see the teachings itself that the Buddha has advocated, has seen, has realized, has taught, and how this can actually bring you auspiciousness and Happy New Year. 阿弥陀佛。愿消三障诸烦恼，愿得智慧真明了，普愿罪障悉消除，世世常行菩萨道。阿弥陀佛，起立。